Welcome to our third quarter webinar for 2022 from the SIOP Bridge Builders Committee. This evening we talk all about graduate school. And in this topic, we cover a wide array of graduate school programs. Keep in mind that we don't even cover all of them. So there are even other options, and you can reach out to any of us or anyone else that in the IO field that might be able to help you. People are very willing to talk to potential future students. Our committee exists to help future students or potential future students find their way into the career of IO psychology and to learn about different pathways, such as graduate school, to get there. We hope you enjoyed tonight's webinar. Please reach out if you have any follow-up questions.
As you have questions throughout, please feel free to use the Q&A to post your questions, and we'll go ahead and start. So we'll start with Derek. We'll have everyone introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the type of grad program they're representing here, maybe where they went, where they are, whatever you want to share there. Derek, you want to start?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. I guess let me start by saying I'm Derek Avery, and because this is a SIOP event, I am SIOP's Diversity and Inclusion Officer, so I feel obligated to put that out there. In terms of where I went to graduate school, I went to Rice University and got my PhD in Industrial and Organizational Psychology from Rice. I have worked in both business and in psychology doctoral programs. I am presently the doctoral coordinator for the Management and Leadership Department at the Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. So I will be primarily representing business doctoral programs, but I think we have 4 IOs in my department. So don't feel as though, I'm speaking a different language or talking about a completely different thing.
Okay, good. And Afra?
Hi, everyone. My name's Afra Ahmad, and I am a longtime George Mason University patriot. I went to Mason for undergrad, master's, PhD, and then I went away for a few years in between on a Fulbright to the United Arab Emirates. And I also, after I got my PhD, was teaching in a business school in Dubai before returning back to George Mason University. And now I currently lead our fully online master's program. So Mason does have 3 IO programs. We have the in-person PhD program and master's programs that have been around since 1972. And then we have the fully online program that started with me about 3 years ago in 2019, right before the pandemic. We had a vision and we knew it was going to happen. No, but that's a little bit about my experiences and the program I'm representing, but I'm hoping to speak to, all of the type of programs that Mason has to offer and share a little bit more about that.
Great, thank you. Lisa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Kath, and I'm an associate professor at San Diego State University's psychology department. And my specialty is industrial organizational psychology, of course, the best. And I've been here for 15 years. We have a face-to-face 2-year master's program, and we do not have a doctoral program. So the terminal master's is really our focus with regards to graduate education. And I'm looking forward to answering questions you guys have.
Great, thank you. And Keaton.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keaton Fletcher. I'm an assistant professor of industrial organizational psychology at the Georgia Institute of Technology. We have a terminal PhD in IO Psych. There's also a business school program, but we're not there. And we don't have a terminal master's degree. You get one along the way. And so when you're accepted to our program, you're accepted for the full thing. Please don't stop at the master's.
All right, and Ludmila.
Hi, I'm Ludmila Praslova, and I am professor at Vanguard University of Southern California. We have a master's program in industrial organizational psychology, and it is a face-to-face program for people who want to work full-time, so all of our classes are at night. I went to the University of Akron MA PhD program, which was a very classic very standard IO-MA PhD program. So I can definitely speak to this type of programs and my experience as well. And I look forward to answering everyone's questions.
Great, thank you. And I guess I should say I'm at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and I am in the business school in the Department of Management, and I do interface with the MBA program to some extent, so master's in business, and then I actually work with students in other areas as graduate assistants, so other master's students in the business school. We do not have a PhD program in management, so Derek's representing that, but I do have other PhD students I've had some exposure to, including in management information systems and entrepreneurship. So sometimes students are kind of considering different fields. I could say a little bit about that if that's of interest. And okay, so let's move on. As I said, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. To some of those we will type and answer, but others we will address live, so you can watch that screen too. So our next question or our next topic here is really going to be to hear from each person about the advantages of your type of program or what type of students it might be a good fit for. So we'll just go in the same order. So Derek, you want to start?
Sure. I think that one of the primary advantages, I guess, within this conversation that differentiates getting a business degree in terms of a PhD from getting a PhD in IO is really the emphasis on your kind of peripheral areas of study. Because I think that your core concentration, there's going to be a lot of overlap if you do an IO degree as opposed to focusing on organizational behavior or human resource management. Whereas if you're in psychology, your peripheral training is going to be in psychology and largely focus on the other core areas that are represented within that doctoral program, whether that be cognitive or social or clinical. When you're in a business school, you're going to get primarily business-oriented training. So your other classes are going to be things like org theory. You may take classes in strategy. You may have classes in finance or in marketing. And so you're really going to get more of a generalist business approach as kind of rounding you out. But I would say that in terms of the academic preparation, a lot of what I have seen within the business school tends to be more geared towards training you for an academic job. The overwhelming emphasis in most business schools is preparing people for academic placements. Whereas in IO, you will absolutely get, more of the scientist practitioner model, which is, kind of a strange thing when you think about it, that in the business school, we don't actually, spend as much time preparing you for, business stuff. But it is just a reality of the situation. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people who get PhDs in business and go on to do applied things, but that is not the emphasis of the training that you receive. And it is also, it is kind of scorned upon. So, faculty may abandon you if you, say 2 or 3 years in, hey, I feel like, I'd really be better off, doing something in industry or in an applied setting. Aside from that, I think there's a lot of commonalities, in terms of the types of interests students have. We get a lot of students who cross apply. So, we find ourselves, entertaining and recruiting students who have applied to doctoral programs in other business schools, in industrial and labor relations programs, as well as in IO. So I think that, your topical interests can be anywhere, within the micro side of business, or on the macro side, if you're, one of those strategy folks that I have a difficult time relating to conceptually. So I think that's the thing that I would emphasize the most about our types of programs is that they will prepare you to be a business school professor. They will ease your entry into, becoming a business school professor in ways that Other programs, there are transaction costs of trying to move from IO to business or move from labor relations to business. So I think that's the primary upside. And I will leave other folks to talk about, some of the primary upsides to IO, because I think that there are plenty of them as well.
Yeah, I think maybe we should go to Keaton next, talking about the PhD program in IO Psych, so we have more of a direct contrast there.
Awesome. Yeah. So our PhD program in IO Psych is more traditional, as Ludmila pointed out. We do have that scientist practitioner model. As Derek mentioned, I went to the University of South Florida for my PhD in IO, and it was a similar setup, and I imagine it's the same at other types of universities. Most advisors are open to our students going applied. I would say on average about somewhere between 60 and 80% of students end up with applied jobs out of graduate school from an IO Psych program, kind of depending on the emphasis of the PhD program. It might be higher, might be lower, but I think you're hard pressed to find an IO Psych degree program where a majority are going into academic careers. That said, the training is still aligned with an academic career. Or at least my mentality as an advisor, and I know that of my colleagues, is we'll train you for an academic career because publications never hurt anyone, and you're set up well to get an applied job. But along the way, you're gaining those statistical skills. You're gaining the understanding of theory that you can apply in the real world. You're taking courses on how to apply what you're learning to the real world as well. We also have internship requirements. And so I joked about, please don't stop at the master's, but it's important that we do have a master's degree along the way, because that qualifies you for a lot of internships, just having that MA or MS after your name. And it's expected that our graduate students take internships along the way, either during summer or once they've passed their comprehensive exams, that they're out on internships that will likely eventually turn into jobs. So I would say if you're interested in getting a PhD in IO psychology, there's really, as opposed to a master's, the advice that I give people is like, you have to be interested in research. If you're getting into it just in order to apply the research, then reevaluate and think about getting a master's degree. There are ways to get those paid for. I know an appeal of the PhD program is someone else is paying for it usually, but there's ways to pay for master's programs that so you're not paying out of pocket. But a PhD program is 6 years of your life. It's going to be research focused, even in an IO Psych program where it is that scientist practitioner model. The goal is still do a dissertation, do a thesis, publish these things along the way, and as well as work on research with your advisor and publish that. And so if you don't like research, would not suggest getting a PhD. And then if you're considering an applied career with a PhD in IO, I think with the advice is still, for me at least, when I got into the program, I wanted to go applied, and the appeal for me was I want to direct the research. I want to be the one who's asking the questions, who's guiding these questions, not the one who's executing them necessarily. And so that's the other reason I'll tell someone who wants to go applied to get a PhD in IO Psych, is if you want to be the one asking the questions. But then certainly you can obviously go the academic route with an IO Psych degree. I did it, we did it. So that's also an option as well. I think those are the main distinctions there.
That's great. And we had a question come up that made me realize we might need to take a step back. Is IO more business-based or psychology-based? Yes, right? It's all of it. So the I is industrial, the O is organizational. The I kind of maps onto the HR field loosely, and then the O kind of maps onto the organizational behavior, or OB field. But if any of y'all have anything to add to that, please do.
I will jump in because Derek also mentioned the ancillary courses you're taking. And so I think that could be a distinction as well, right? If you're getting your degree in management, you're a little bit more on that business side. Your emphasis is on learning, the external business components. Whereas if you're getting your degree in IO, you're learning also social psychology, cognitive psychology. The ancillaries kind of depend on which program, but you are getting trained on that psychology side, so it shifts that balance. I think Sarah hit the nail on the head with it's both, but whether you're going management or you're going IO, I think tips it, 60% business or 60% psych.
And another distinction, I think we're trained as psychologists even more heavily in things like job analysis and testing, assessment, validation, stuff like that. So I don't know, Derek, if you guys emphasize that as much in your management PhD.
Typically, no. But what I would say is that it's a bit idiosyncratic depending upon who's in the program, what their points of emphasis might be in the training.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Good. Okay, anyone else want to add anything about PhD programs, differences, similarities, maybe other things students should think about if they are thinking PhD, the other types of programs? Yeah, Lisa.
The only thing that I'll add is that when I started my PhD program or was even thinking about applying, I thought, well, I can do research. I know I can handle it, but it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then I started doing research in my PhD program and I was like, oh, actually, this is much more fun than I thought. So I just want to point out that a lot of times students don't know whether they like research or not. It's really hard to tell from undergraduate research experience whether you like it or not. So I always try to encourage students to really consider PhD programs and not close that path to themselves too soon, and to just try to be open to the idea that research maybe doesn't sound that fun, but it's more fun than you might think.
That was my experience as well. I was pleasantly surprised how much I liked it. Okay, Afra?
I think a lot of us can say that. So when I was an undergrad, I had volunteered in the social and emotional development lab because I was actually thinking going the counseling route. And for the counseling program at George Mason, they were like, you need 1,000 hours working with kids. So I joined the social emotional development lab and I was working in preschools and Head Starts administering puppet measures. And I remember the faculty member being like, you really like research and you ask some great questions. You're very curious about the world around you. And so it was almost like, Lisa, like you said, like she pointed out, like my interest in research. And that led me into applying for the undergrad honors program where I had an opportunity to work with a faculty member. And I remember I was thinking, well, I'm going to go in and I'll probably continue working in that lab. And in came Dr. Eden King, who became my advisor, and she talked about IO psychology and changing the workplace one study at a time, and talking about diversity and discrimination. And I was hooked from that day on. And so I think that sometimes you have an idea what you want to do. And if you're here and you don't have an idea, whether you're at the undergrad level, in between undergrad and grad school, or thinking about certain programs, definitely explore those different options and opportunities. And you're doing a great thing by coming to webinars and things like this.
Great. Well, go ahead, Ludmila.
I just thought I'm an example of the opposite. Because when I was in the undergrad, I thought I wanted to do research. It was so fun. It is so interesting. And then I worked for a few years and I still felt like I really, really want to do research. And I don't want to do anything but, just work with ideas and intellectual concepts and discovering new things. And the graduate course sort of cured me of that a little bit. And in all honesty, and I also discovered that I actually like teaching. And I like making hands-on difference and doing things like diversity training. So it's entirely possible that in different phases in your life, you will want to use one or another skill set, and then maybe there will be just another iteration of you at some point, and you would want to pull up either applied or practical skills, which is why your psych is such a great degree, because you really do develop both.
That's a great segue to the master's program. So do you want to start talking about your program, Ludmila, where you are?
Sure. Our program,
or the type of student that would be kind of the best for it.
Yes.
We'll get into it.
So our program was specifically designed for working adults. And so it was a plan from the beginning to allow our students to work full-time and have both master's degree and a lot of applied experience by the time they graduate. So initially we thought that we're going to target a student who is a little bit older, but it really turned out that we attract all kinds of students who just graduated from the undergrad and they're interested in being in a master's program and developing their skills also at the same time. And we had one student who graduated and turned 70. So it's not the most typical, but we get students from all the different stages in their career. Most of them are in their mid to late 20s, but it can definitely range. And most of them do work full time. So we meet in person one night a week for 4 hours, and that allows students to both get in-person experience, cohort experience with their group, but it seems like not much. Obviously there's a lot more because there's homework and so forth, so just 4 hours a week, but most people are really able to balance their demands, their work, their family, and their education. And you do need quite a bit of dedication. It's not the easiest thing. We have 2 tracks. One has a thesis, which is Master of Science in IO Psychology and Master of Arts in Organizational Psychology. And especially if you're doing our MS thesis track, it does require quite a bit of dedication and sticking with your research topic, your exploration. And it could help someone to get into doctoral program if that's what they want to do. But it also could also help them just establish themselves as someone with a particular area of specialty in their applied career. But we did later on create another option for Master of Arts because there are quite a few students who would rather be kind of more generalists. So we have comps instead of thesis at the end of our Master of Arts program, and people who, let's say, want to be HR generalists, for example, or HR business partners, or students who already are in the workplace and want to be promoted really benefit from that option. But overall, we have many students who end up in training and development, learning careers, quite a few HR business partners, and then higher up HR VPs, senior directors of HR, and people who can also go organizational development. So I see the question about organizational development versus IO. We do actually have quite a few students who graduated from our program and went into organizational development careers and have organizational development titles. So that definitely is a possibility. And for the most part, I think our students say that ability to work and build career and get promotions while they were in a program and get guidance from faculty while they do some kind of applied studies for their workplace definitely help them advance.
Great. Great, thank you. So Afra, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So our program, the Masters of Professional Studies in Applied Industrial Organizational Psychology, our fully online program, is geared towards working adults. But that's not to say that we have all types of students that are coming into our program. So we accept cohorts coming in 3 times a year, so spring, summer, and fall. And so we have an ongoing admission cycle, and students come applying to our program. Some of them recently graduated just last term, and others, it's been 30 years since they graduated. We have students who are in entry-level positions in the organization, and some who are in very prestigious, well-known organizations, VP level. And so what's really neat is that students in a similar cohort, they're getting that advantage of learning from one another and building upon, okay, someone who just got out of school and someone who has all this work experience. In our program, a majority of our students do work full-time, but there are some that are in transition. I mean, we had student who was a teacher for over a decade and then was transitioning into the field and was taking a break and those sort of things. So you definitely see a lot of variety and diversity in our student population. And so our student program is fully online. The courses are asynchronous. They're built based on best pedagogical practices for online learners. But we really strive and have a culture of folks attending our live synchronous class time. So we have those, what they're called office hours, but it takes place like not traditional office hours, just show up and have questions. Sometimes there's mini lectures, guest speakers, we breakout groups. And I would say I just got done teaching a class about 25, and a good 20 to 22 are showing up. So it's actually more students showing up in my online office hours than I've ever had in my in-person office hours. So students really do engage with faculty and enjoy that time with each other and so forth. And so in terms of interest and like career goals, we have students who are hoping to go into traditional IO related positions. We have students that are, in a variety of positions in their current organizations and either looking for promotion or hoping to use the scientist to practitioner, model, and to hoping to use best practices from the field to apply into their current work. So this could be someone was, head of in like healthcare administration, they were manager and were in IT, and they're like, okay, now I'll never forget my research methods class. One of the students was like, oh my God, we give out surveys to our doctors, and I realized we're not learning anything. These are so bad in terms of psychometric properties and those sort of things. So it's really neat to see students being able to apply what they're learning directly back into the work that they're doing. And like I said, for some students, they want to just be better at their job, and others are looking for that promotion within their own organizations, and others are looking to transition out into another area. And so we do have that diversity as well.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
All right, so our master's program is a little different than the two that you just heard about. I think there's more variation in master's programs than there are in PhD programs, so that's something to keep in mind. Our master's program is very much like the first 2 years of a PhD program. So we expect you to be full-time, face-to-face. We don't expect you to be working. We expect you to be focused on your studies. You're required to do a thesis. So, we're mean and traditional and grouchy. But on the plus side, we also do offer assistantships for all the students who attend our program. We have a very, very small ratio of, students to faculty or faculty to students, whichever direction that's supposed to be. And so you get a lot of individualized attention, and, it's very research focused. So you're reading, primary source journal articles, and you're taking several stats classes throughout the 2 years. Like, we work you. When you get out, you can get degrees or you can get jobs in people analytics is a really popular area because we have a pretty strong quantitative and research emphasis. We've got a lot of people working in people analytics, and the tech companies love that. So we've got alums who are working at Google and Qualcomm and ServiceNow and Twitter and Stitch Fix and all these other places that are popular, in the tech darlings or whatever it is. Oh, and LinkedIn's another one. We visited there. They have really good food at LinkedIn. And then we've got people who are working in sort of more adjacent fields like organizational development and in user experience research sometimes, or in program management. So it's really interesting. I know we saw one of the questions in the chat was, what's a typical day in the life of? And there just is no typical day in the life of in these careers. It's extremely varied. So I wouldn't pick this area because of what you want to do every day. I would pick it because you like understanding why people do what they do at work. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else about our master's program that would be helpful for you to know, but I can't think of anything. So I guess that's it.
We'll come back to you again whenever.
Yeah, perfect.
We'll get into more details of the mechanics. So we've heard about some of the master's programs mechanics in terms of their structure. Let's go back to the PhD programs for a minute and talk about that. What is maybe the typical length, or the number of years, or like how do the courses work? Just generally, at least, to give people a snapshot. Derek, you want to start?
Sure. So typically you're going to have about 2 to 2.5 years of coursework, depending upon how it is structured and whether or not you take classes during the summer. In the event that you don't take classes in the summer, you may end up with 2.5 years of coursework. Most of the time, students will try and use the summers to focus exclusively on their research. Those courses will include, core seminars where, you will, take deeper dives into certain areas, as well as sort of overview seminars where you just get, exposed to a broad array of topics under a big umbrella like strategy or like HR or OB. In terms of the length of the program, It's fairly rare that students graduate in 4 years, although it can be done. I was a 4-year PhD, so I know that it can be done. There are some military folks who actually do it in 3. I would not recommend that unless you have a military background and are ready for, because it's going to be a lot like boot camp. But I would say that typical probably is 5 years. A lot of programs, will allow you to do that 6th year if you're in good standing and need it to become more competitive for the academic market. So some years the academic market is really, really plentiful, meaning there are tons of jobs out there, and so you may not need to be as competitive. Other years it can be much leaner. And so you may have students who, try to get that 6th year so that they can really, get some of the research that they have in the pipeline published in order to be more competitive on an academic market.
Good. And in the business school, do students get their master's along the way? I don't know if you said that or not.
In most programs, no.
Okay.
Typically, the only way that you will get a master's is as sort of a consolation prize, meaning that things did not go well, and we don't want anyone to leave empty-handed. So, here's the sort of
here's the
consolation
master's
prize. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, Keaton, you want to share on your end this similar?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. We have between 2 and 3 years of classes. You might take classes over the summer, or you might not. It kind of depends on your program and program's offerings. And also, again, the length of that really depends on the emphasis of your specific department. So my graduate program that I went to at University of South Florida was 3 full years of courses plus summer coursework. And so it's very course heavy, whereas at Georgia Tech, it's maybe 2.5 with like a class or 2 per semester. So it's a lot lighter on the courses. And I think that's not only based on your IO area, but like the broader perspective of the system it's built in. So if you have a really clinical heavy psychology department, you're going to have a course heavy IO program. And if you have a more cognitive heavy psychology department, you're going to have a very light course load, just to kind of keep all the graduate students on sort of the same-ish trajectory. I couldn't figure out, I was trying to figure out how to put this in the Q&A or the chat, but if you Google PsyOp course recommendations, there's a list of all the core courses and or the skills you're supposed to get from these courses if you go to an IO PhD program. And I think that's really helpful. So you'll take courses, as Derek was saying, some of them will be basic level, a lot of them will be research methods. Pretty much all IO programs are really research methods heavy. You're gonna learn a lot of different stats. They might ship those out to different departments, whether it's math or education or business, or they can house them in-house, kind of depending on the makeup of the faculty, and then different seminars. Then most programs will have comprehensive exams or comprehensive prelims paper type thing. It really depends program to program. My personal preference is comprehensive exams. They were very stressful, but I feel like I still use my notes for my comprehensive exams once a week. It's a really helpful system, but it's a lot higher pressure and it slows down that publication rate. Whereas if you have a prelims where you're writing a paper that's a review of the literature or a deep dive into an area, can really help you springboard into your dissertation and publish. So again, that's a program to program thing. You'll have a thesis usually as well to get that master's degree along the way. As Derek said, we want people to get something out of it usually. And so I think you're hard pressed to find an IO PhD program that doesn't do an along the way master's. And then once you get those out of the way, all you have left is just one more study, just your dissertation, not a big deal. You can do it. It's one project, or at least that's what I tell my students. And again, usually there's an internship requirement. And requirement can usually be waived, again, depending on the program and the perspectives. But if you know hardcore, you want to go academic, and an internship isn't necessarily going to facilitate that. Usually your advisor can work with you to get an internship that is academically oriented. But most people want that internship experience. That's why we're in IO. And yeah, so 5 or 6 years, They're funded, again, usually you have some TA-ships or research assistants if your advisor has grants. I think it covers the bases. That's the structure.
That's great, thank you. Who wants to go next on the master's side to add any detail, maybe talking about the length of each of your programs? Ludmila, do you want to start again there?
Sure. Our Master of Science program, the thesis track, is 2 full years with summer. So 6 semesters considering summer as a semester. And our Master of Arts program is 1 semester shorter. So it's a year with a summer and then 2 more semesters. It's 5 semesters. And people definitely have to work quite a lot. It's pretty fast-paced. One thing that helps is that students take 1 class at a time. And I think many people do find that this is one way to relieve stress. So it sounds like, oh my gosh, we go through the summer, we go all the time, but it is 1 class at a time. So we have a half semester, 8-week class, a Saturday seminar in between, which is an all day 1 unit class on a special topic, something that's applied and cool. And we have cool guest speakers, usually just interesting practitioners in various disciplines, and then another 3-unit class. So your semester consists of 2 3-unit courses and 1 1-unit course in between. And rather than taking multiple classes at once, most students do find that just focusing on this 1 class at a time definitely helps with the workload. And this way people can accumulate credits over time. All of our classes are also very deliberately sequenced. You can't jump around and take classes, you know, like some people take in the undergrad at any time you want. All classes build on each other. So there is a logical progression, and we expect very specific skills from writing, research, theory, higher level writing, higher level research, to just kind of building on each other in those courses that, again, sequence is also a very important part of what we do.
Great. All right. Afra, you want to go next?
Sure. So our fully online master's program is, 18 months. So you're done in about 1.5 years. And our students do take courses throughout the year as well. So spring, summer, and fall, those 3 terms. And our courses are back-to-back with some small breaks in between. But if a student, for whatever reason, this has happened before, if they want to, they're having a baby, they're going on a trip, or they know they want to take a little bit of a break, it's actually quite easy to take off for a term and jump back in, because all of our courses are offered 3 times a year. And so that allows for that flexibility. And similar to what Ludmila was saying, we have a sort of structure in place for courses to come in a certain sequence. So students coming into our program, they first take the introduction to the science and practice of biopsychology. We recognize, as I mentioned earlier, we had students coming from a variety of backgrounds, educational backgrounds and work experiences, that everyone wasn't sort of on the same level playing field when it came to IO, whereas our PhD and master students typically have students coming from psychology, right? And so we have that intro course that we've now adopted and built into the curriculum. And then they take Foundations of Organizational Psych, Applied Data Analytics 1, Foundations of Industrial Psychology, Applied Data Analytics 2, Selection. Then they do the research methods and practicum. And so the research methods and practicum course goes hand in hand, because they identify a workplace problem. It could be one they're having in their own organization, and they go through the entire research process of identifying a research question, doing the literature review, writing hypotheses, identifying measures, administering the survey, putting it up on Qualtrics, administering it in their organization, collecting data, and then, analyzing the data and writing up the full research paper, as well as a white paper, and doing an applied presentation. So they have that experience that counts as their research methods and practicum experience. So it's sort of involving bringing in their work and their studies together. And then after they wrap that up, they can pick from two electives. So we have course offerings in applied leadership, motivation, well-being, teamwork, organizational change and development, performance management, and workplace training. So they have the option of taking 2 electives. And so we also have students focusing on 1 class at a time to help balance their work needs. So about approximately 8 weeks for a class, and then take it. So some, fall session 1, 8 weeks, then fall session 2 will be 8 weeks. And they are focused on, because we approximate about 20 hours a week for, obviously give and take based on individual differences, to do your readings, to do the different types of assessments. We have, practice exercises built in. We have applied projects built in. So they're actually doing the job analysis, validation study, training project and things. And, writing papers, discussion posts, and engaging with one another. And so that's approximately how long our program takes and how many hours they're putting in a week typically.
Great, thank you. And Lisa, do you want to add on your end?
Yes, absolutely. So our classes are only held in the fall and the spring semesters. It's a 2-year program. Some students take longer because their thesis maybe isn't completed at the end of 2 years. So they may finish in the summer after their 2nd year. Sometimes it lingers. I've had students start their jobs and think that they'll be able to finish their thesis really easily, and then it takes like 3 years after they start their jobs. But, we try to stick with them and get them finished up. The summers, we do not have any classes. Students typically work on their internship hours. There are 300 required internship hours. And also work on their thesis project. That's the biggest hurdle that everyone has to cross before they get a degree from our school. So it's a fairly traditional program. There are very few degrees of freedom in our program. You don't get to choose your classes. We pretty much choose them for you, and we march you through them. And yes, I guess in that way, it's kind of nice. You don't have to decide a lot of things. And we really try to cover the basics. Two seminar classes on the I side, or the industrial side, which is kind of more selection training, performance appraisal, job analysis, that kind of stuff. And then 2 classes on the organizational side. We've got an emphasis on occupational health psychology, because we've got some of us that love that stuff, but also a broad brush of leadership, motivation, job attitudes, emotions at work, all that kind of good stuff. So and then I think you have 1 elective, and most students elect to take multivariate statistics because we're a bunch of nerds. So that's our program.
That's great. So while you're on the mic, how about we shift to the admission process, kind of who gets in, how do you get in, giving a little preview of each program and kind of type of degree here.
Okay, great. So one thing that I'll say broadly about admissions just across the board is that what you're looking for, I think, as a student, my recommendation for students, if I can be bossy, which I think is the point, is to really go for the most competitive program that you can go for. I think that you learn a lot from your peers, and when you're in a program that's competitive, the peers will help you learn. And that said, there's lots of room for programs that are less competitive. They may bring in some additional perspectives that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. So it's not that the competitiveness is necessarily a clear marker of quality, but I find that students get freaked out by the competitiveness. And so I'm just trying to encourage you not to, because there's some real benefits to just throwing your hat in the ring. What I tell students is that when you're 50, you're going to look back and be more likely to be sorry you didn't try than you are to be sorry that you tried and got rejected. So, and I can say this with great confidence now that I'm over 50. Like, seriously, you got to get over it. But back to sort of our program at San Diego State, I think in part because we offer funding for our students, is more competitive than some PhD programs in IO psychology. We have typically around 100 applicants, and our incoming class is between 4 to 8 students. So it's really quite competitive to get in. We're looking for students who have a decent GPA, although I'll accept stories about your GPA. If you've got a story, please tell it in your personal statement, and don't assume that we'll just not pay attention to it. We'll pay attention to your GPA and your story. We often take the GRE. We didn't for a little while, but it's coming back. And we're looking for research experience because the thesis is a required part of our program. That's a really important part of the competitiveness. A question I get asked a lot is whether it's important to have research experience in IO psychology, and it is not. Many of you guys are at schools that don't have IO. We get it. We forgive you. How could you know at 18 that, you know, you wanted to go into IO psychology? So like, don't worry about it. We'll take research experience in anything. We've had students who had research experience in biology. We were like, close enough, you're in, because they had a lot of other great things going for them. So don't talk yourself out of that. But just being able to understand what that research process is like is really what we're looking for. And my nerdiest advice for admissions is to do a job analysis on what it means to be an IO psychologist or to be a grad student in IO. And think about what are the KSAOs, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, and other characteristics that are required to do well in grad school, and show us in your personal statement why you have this knowledge, why do you have these skills, why do you have these abilities, these other characteristics that are going to help you be successful in grad school, and just point out the parts of your application that are evidence that you can be successful in grad school. So that's really sort of my best and nerdiest advice for getting into grad school and being competitive for admissions.
Love it. Thank you, Lisa. All right, who wants to go next? Ludmila?
Sure, I can go. We're a little bit more holistic in how we look at a student, and we like research, we like good GPA, but what we really like is the understanding of why. And we look very carefully at statements and then interviews. And a student who can articulate their story, how they got to this place, which experiences made them interested in the field, and where they see themselves and how they want to get there, are probably students who would do the best in our format. So we tend to look at someone who has a really good understanding of not necessarily a particular, I want to have this job, but let's say, what do they want to contribute? Why do they want to be in the talent field? They maybe want to rectify some of the discrimination issues that have existed in the field, or they want to make selection more fair. So those kinds of things that come maybe from stories. We have students say, I saw my parents suffer and suffer and suffer, and I want to make workplaces care more about human well-being. So that's the kind of story that would help someone also pick their research project, because we start research projects very early, and students who know why they are interested in the field are in a much better place to be able to pick what they want to study, and their heart is going to be in it. And motivation is probably, most people here will agree, is something that is absolutely necessary in most cases for people to make through those significant research projects. So we do look at statistical skills, research experience. Undergrad research experience is definitely a plus. Previous research classes and statistics classes, and the usual things like social psychology and businessy type coursework. But the story and the why and the clarity for where student is hoping to find themselves and what kind of difference they want to make in the world is probably the major thing that we look at, because we really want to help students to get where they want to be.
Great. So there's a common theme that statement, that personal statement's important in all instances. Afra, do you want to add your perspective?
Sure. So again, as I mentioned, Mason has 3 programs. So our PhD program, we are looking at that GPA, the GRE, and that research experience, and really that advisor fit. And so that's really important, that I want to emphasize that if you're looking into PhD programs, make sure that you strongly in your personal statement articulate why you want to work with a particular advisor. And it's actually probably a good idea to list 2 of the faculty in their research interests, because you never know, someone might be going on sabbatical. And I'm being involved on this side now on the faculty. I hear all these conversations, and these are things that I wish I would have known as a student. So I want to make sure I highlighted some of those observations. Our on-ground traditional master's program, we had the GRE requirements, but we're no longer continuing it after the pandemic because we had stopped it. But typically that was looking at, GPA, GRE, and research experience, those sort of things. And again, that on-ground master's program, we're not continuing the GRE. So both the PhD and the master's on ground, you're expected to come to Fairfax. And in that master's program, you're here for 2 years and working oftentimes. And we do have a consortium sort of thing in the DMV area where you're able to get placements into, part-time work and internships. And then the online MPS program, students are typically, we are looking at that GPA. There is no GRE requirement and that work experience. So we found that the students bringing in that rich work experience and integrating it into the class discussions and conversations and really bridging that scientist practitioner model, it really, has been most fruitful. So we are, playing an important factor or emphasis on that work experience. And some prerequisites are helpful, like your stats and research methods prerequisites. And, definitely spend time on those personal statements. As Ludmila highlighted, we want to hear how you're hoping to make your organization and workplace better through your training with us.
Great. It sounds kind of similar to MBA, where MBA sometimes work experience is more important than some of the other things. Not all MBA programs, but some. Keaton, do you want to go next?
Yeah, great. I think PhD programs, as Afra said, are, the advisor fit really matters. There is, however, it varies the degree to which that matters based on the program. So if you're applying to Georgia Tech, for example, I am essentially my own program when it comes to applications. No one else has to approve who I take. No one else looks at them or why I'm taking them. I just say, this is the person that I want. They are going to come work with me. You guys cool with that? And people will all say yes. And that's it. Whereas other programs, you're applying more to the program itself. You don't pick an advisor your first year. You kind of shop around. And so that advisor fit matters a little bit less. I would still, in your letters, certainly say these people's research interest me, because you want a champion on the inside saying no, we should bring this person in those discussions. So one thing I always recommend is do your homework. Look at who's at the program and email them or email their graduate students if you have access. And one, ask if they're still taking students. And then two, ask to be put in touch with the graduate students so you can ask more about that lab. Most faculty will eventually be happy to talk to you, but we get a lot of these requests, especially at the higher tier schools. And so we'll say, talk to my grad student first and then come talk to me. So do your homework, because you don't want to waste an application. If the only reason you're applying to that school is to work with a specific person and they're not taking any students, then you just blew $75 or however much the application fee is. I hate application fees. I think that, whatever. Anyways, relatedly, we are taking the GRE now as well. We paused the requirement over COVID, as I think most schools did. And it's required, but you can waive it if you have economic reasons that the GRE causes economic disadvantage, but you can't also quite get the waiver through ETS or whoever puts on the GRE. So it's waivable for us on a case-by-case basis. I would say for a graduate program, especially if it's top tier or PhD, for a PhD program, you're looking to try to be in the 80th percentile or higher for PhD. That's, again, top tier in the PhD realm. The percentage can vary. And most people don't like strict cutoffs. No one's using a strict cutoff, but it's just to give you a ballpark. If you're in the 30th percentile in your GRE, you're probably not really getting looked at. The GPA, I'm with Lisa on this one. It's pay attention to it, but I'll kind of hand wave the GPA. And I know a lot of my colleagues will as well, because there's a lot of institutional variation on how GPAs are calculated, on how grades are calculated. There's a lot of inflation at schools, deflation in schools, and so drawing that comparison is really hard. Some schools will ask you to do a psych-specific GPA or a last 2 year specific GPA. The application process is really annoying because no one wants the exact same GPA yourself. So make sure that you're doing really well in your psych-specific programs if you're applying to psychology, or your related programs if it's for whatever degree you're applying to. And then, yeah, cover letter, including why you're applying this. And for us, it's more about, as Lisa said, showing, I think it was Lisa, showing those skills, like doing the KSAOs of like, I am interested in research. Like you want to drill home the research part for a PhD of this is, I'm coming here to do research in IO psychology. I know what IO psychology is. And I know what research entails. Here's how the experience that I have, ideally like volunteering or getting paid research experience, and it doesn't have to be an IO. We'll forgive you again for not having that experience, specifically in IO, but any research experience, just so you know the process and you aren't scared away. And that you want to go into IO specifically rather than whatever. And then if there's any other attenuating circumstances that like we should care about. So for example, if you are particularly tied to Atlanta because your spouse is in Atlanta, this is dicey advice, but I'm going to give this advice and take it with a grain of salt. But if there's a specific reason that you're tied to a location, like tied to a location, put that in your letter, because that, to me, on the choosing end, means that I have a better chance of you coming to my school than someone else's school if you're competitive. So I'm going to use my one slot to give to you because I think you're going to be a yes. So it might be worthwhile putting in there, again, dicier, and that advice is honestly probably better for men than women. Sorry, I think if we like look at the statistics, there's a penalty for women, not men. I think that's it.
Thank you, Keaton. All right, Derek.
So I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said in terms of kind of core things that we look at being standardized test scores. One potential difference is you might take the GMAT instead of the GRE. If you do really well on one or the other, most places will take either. So I typically tell people try them both, see which one you're better at, go with the one that you do better on. I second all of the things that everyone before me has said about the importance of the personal statement. It is really your opportunity to tell your story. Yes, we look at test scores. Yes, we look at grades. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to grade point average, but I will go through your transcript, particularly if your standardized test scores are not stellar. I'm going to be looking through that transcript because I want to see, well, how did you do in, your quantitatively oriented classes? Because by and large, when we're looking at standardized test scores, most people are placing significantly more weight on how you did on the quant, just because there are so many, methods and analytical oriented classes that you got to get through in order to get your degree. So if you did really well in classes, but you have, test anxiety issues, then I can see that in your transcript. So that is important to know that, your standardized test scores will not rule you out at a lot of places now, particularly after the last few years, where places went test optional and have seen some amazing results with some students. There was a student I really wanted to take who didn't do particularly well, and now she's killing it at another institution. And so I keep pointing to her. So just know how to tell your story, because what your personal statement is it's, the why me, right? It's your chance to, tie all of the things together and say, this is how I arrived at this point in my life where I know that this is what I want to do, and really sell it, really sell it.
That's great.
I'm so sorry. One thing I forgot to say, and I think none of us actually mentioned, was letters of recommendation. For PhD programs, I'm not sure for masters, we require 3 letters of recommendation. And as a letter writer as well, you want to make sure that you actually have a relationship with that person. So again, this is probably someone that you're doing research with. If you are doing related work experience, so if you have an internship in HR or management or statistics or something like that, people analytics, then get that. I think that's a fine letter writer if you don't have enough like research experience letter writers. But like random person letters are not useful, right? So just like a boss is not someone that we're really looking for if for your library position. And then, or like it can be from a professor you've just taken a class from, but that letter's not going to be high quality. And so you really want to make sure, like that's the other part of doing research, is it allows you to get those connections and show those skills for your letter writers. Ask your letter writers early if they're willing to write you a good letter. And then when they do go to write you a letter, give them a list of the schools you're applying to, as well as like a little heads up to what you want them to speak to. Be like, these are specifically the skills that I think you can highlight in your letter of mine. I'm asking you to be a letter writer because this is the perspective I want you to bring to the table. And I think along with what Derek was saying, if there's any sort of weaknesses in your application, whether it's the GRE scores or your GPA, your letter writer can also sort of like corroborate your skills, can corroborate the story that got you to where you are in their letters. And so you can say like, hey, I have really bad test anxiety, tanked the GRE, but I need them to know that I have these skills, that I'm smart. And like, so this is what I'm hoping that you can highlight. And maybe you can acknowledge that I have test anxiety and whatever. So I think that's, use your letter writers, make sure you have those relationships, and just keep it in the back of your mind if you're at the start of your trajectory that you're going to need 3 letters by the time you apply. And so you need those 3 sort of close relationships, which I guess ties to research experience. People will say like, there's 2 different camps, stay deep in one and get published in that one camp, or sort of spread out and get different experiences. I'm in that second camp for just pragmatics. That makes it a lot easier to get 3 letters. So sorry, I know we're like at time, but that was, I think, an important thing that I wanted to share.
That's great. Thank you, Keaton. Yeah, we are at time. So if there's anything else someone wants to say as far as a closing thought, I think we could do that. And then we'll, just to respect everyone's time, we'll wrap up. But all the participants have our email addresses, so feel free to reach out to me or to any of us if you have further questions. I'm happy to take questions and kind of in a centralized way if you want to do that. But any of us, if you have further, in your situation questions, we're happy to answer those. So anyone have any closing thoughts you want to share?
I wanted to toss one out there really quickly. I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to cut you
No, go ahead.
So when Keaton was talking, it reminded me that one other major difference that I see between psychology and business is that our applicant pools, we tend to have 2 distinct populations. So we have folks who are coming back from industry, as well as folks who are matriculating up from undergrad. And so for the folks who are coming back from industry, it's often really difficult for them to think about, well, who am I going to get to write letters? Because they haven't had a faculty member in 5 years or in 6 years or in 7 years. And so one of the things that I am a real big advocate of is the folks who take the time to go out and establish relationships with folks who may be local to where they are, who are in that particular space. And then they, either volunteer to acquire research experience and then get letters from those folks. Like, that is a huge thing, because it shows me that degree of commitment to figuring out what this is, and showing that, and then the letters are always positive, right? Oh, this person sought me out. They knew what I did. They, researched me. So it's, again, a differentiating thing if you happen to be a non-traditional student who's taking a more circuitous path to wanting this degree.
That's great. Yeah. Lisa, do you want to chime in? Were you going to say something else?
I was, but I couldn't unmute for a second. It was just good luck and go for it. I think applying to grad school is really scary. And I don't know that we acknowledge the vulnerability that's required to do it. But I really strongly encourage everybody to really go for it. Rejection feels like it's going to be really terrible, but a rejection does not mean that you are incapable of becoming an IO psychologist. A rejection doesn't mean that you couldn't do well even in that specific program. It just means that somebody else beat you out, but you got to get in the arena and make it happen for yourself. So that's it. Just go for it.
Great. Ludmila, were you going to say something?
Very similar. Good luck and go for it. I think Lisa did an amazing job with it. And it is always scary to be evaluated, but it's a part of life. And if they don't want you, then maybe it's not the best fit, and you'll just find whatever the best fit is. Yeah. And you don't get it without any rejection.
That's right. Afra?
Good luck applying. And I think, as everyone's mentioned, it's important to find the right fit. PhD, master's, in person, online, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years. Everyone has their own journey and path. And something I want to close with is enjoy the ride. Grad school was some of the best years of my life. I was very close to I am still very close to my colleagues and friends, and everyone on this panel have been on this journey with me and has met me at different points in my career. And one thing we haven't touched on is that the field, this graduates, whether it's IO psychology, whether it's management, this field, it is a community, it is a tribe, and you are not in this journey alone. You have people to uplift you at different points. And one of my students at SciOp, she said to me, because again, our SciOp conference has been virtual the past 2 years, and after attending for the first time in 3 years in person, she said to me, she said, "Oh, this is the magic that you kept talking about." So just remember that your tribe, your community, they bring a sort of magic into your experience, and it's something that stays with you forever. So find that place that you feel that connection with, and you will soar to great lengths.
Yeah, great. So any of the panelists who have links you want me to share with everyone, I can do that. I'll send out an email once we get the videos uploaded, and it'll probably be a week or two. So be watching for that. And thank you everyone for being here, for listening, and for sharing your insights. So everyone have a great evening. Bye.
Bye.